And I'm back with another video on chemistry and why chemistry is not necessarily real connection and why we confuse oftentimes chemistry for a special connection with someone, thinking that we're dealing with our soulmate because the connection feels so special, because the chemistry is so intense. Let me explain to you the science behind, because there's been studies on this. So put your seatbelt on, maybe have a hot beverage, because this is going to be also a little wake-up call as well. So chemistry has been studied in psychology, and there's an actual scientific definition in psychology of interpersonal chemistry, what is referred to as interpersonal chemistry. So, according to the Race and Colleagues interpersonal chemistry model, chemistry encompasses behaviors and perception that involves a series of interactions in which two or more people express feelings, needs, desires, and goals and are met with appreciation, support, and understanding. Chemistry requires interaction, okay? So just remember that. So, chemistry is a volatile thing. It requires interaction. Without interaction, there's no creation of chemistry if there's a possibility for chemistry between both people, if they share same interest and have the same vision and things like that. Chemistry can also be experienced with friends, with, family member. Like, it's not always doesn't always involve romantic relationships. It can involve be in friendships, and you can feel chemistry with a friend and the same feeling of um, being aligned with the person and feeling like you're understood. But again, it requires interaction. And I want to add to this that chemistry can be manufactured as well when you're dealing with people who are extremely good at mirroring others and studying others and mirroring the same body language and literally mimicking the person in front of us. When you're capable of doing that, you're capable of manufacturing chemistry and giving a sense of chemistry to the person in front of you. Okay? That's what master manipulators do, or, people who manipulate also unconsciously do. They mimic the person they're interested in. They don't know how to be authentic in relationship. So it creates a false sense of chemistry within the person. Now I want to introduce you to the concept of schema chemistry, which is a concept that was brought forth by a doctor called Jeffrey Young in the 80s. And this term and this concept was born around the research that was done around PTSD, and when CBT was coming forth in therapeutic approaches, alternative therapeutic approaches to trauma, and specifically post traumatic stress disorders, and new therapeutic treatment for different kinds of disorders and mental health issues, right? And from CBT was born also schema therapy, which was a more specific approach to treat, mental health issues, and, in the context of researching that. Obviously, it's not talked a lot about, but I am very passionate about that approach of therapy personally, which I think, like, where there's a lot of studies and very interesting studies. So, according to Young, we all operate under a repetition compulsion, aka trauma reenactment, which is referred to as schemas, schema therapy. These are deeply ingrained beliefs that take root in early childhood. And so it's all that goes with our, what we've experienced with childhood, the patterns, and all our beliefs around love and our core beliefs about ourselves, right? And it's been studied that as human beings, we repeat those schemas, those core beliefs that we've integrated in childhood, right? And we operate under them, those will guide us towards partners, friendship. Those will influence completely our choice of partners, our the way we relate to other people, the people we choose to have in our lives, right? And when we're dealing with trauma reenactment, when you're dealing with certain core beliefs that are self-destructive because you've been neglected, abused, etc., that's when you we are going to be drawn to specific people. And in my opinion, we all have some level of, things that karma or patterns that we've inherited from our parents, not necessarily that they were full-blown abusive people, but we all inherit some patterns from our families, right? And those patterns carry out, they're ingrained, they're conditioned in us in childhood, and then we carry them on in adult life, right? And so we all operate under repetition compulsion, okay? And the chemistry oftentimes that we feel with when we're talking, oftentimes it's very important in romantic relationships. When we feel drawn to certain people and we feel this instant connection and very incredible connection, like very deep, like visceral connection to people, we oftentimes are operating under schema chemistry. What we're feeling is schema chemistry. It's the recognition of similar patterns in individuals that reminds us of our caregivers, of the people who brought us up, who raised us in childhood, in the hope of repairing those childhood unmet needs through them, and obviously choosing people who are not going to be able to, like, we're not going to get to that, obviously, to that result, because first of all, one, no one can repair your childhood unmet needs, and second of all, we choose people who are going to act exactly the same as our caregivers, and so re-traumatizing ourselves in that sense, which is why repetition compulsion is also called in psychology, in schema therapy, trauma reenactment. So it's not only just, for instance, love bombing that it's going to get us hooked, although someone can really, really manufacture chemistry with you, and you can be drawn to someone because of the chemistry they manufactured, or because the way of how you feel or your interaction with them. But what will oftentimes in this society keep us in toxic relationship, it is this schema chemistry that we experience, because that goes beyond interaction, that happens on a very deep subconscious level. And so that's where we get this sense of, and I've been there myself, that's where we get this sense of deep connection. And a lot of us women mistake that for actual connection and actual love, because it's very intense and it's very attractive and familiar, and it's something that feels like deep chemistry, and it makes us feel like we have really such a special connection with the person. But we might just experience that on one side. That's what is dangerous with that. It's also that this schema chemistry that we might experience and recognize, like experience with someone, might just be in one way. We might be the only one experiencing that. And there also can be both people experiencing the same as well. So one or the other. But what is dangerous with that is that it makes us feel and attach very, very, very strongly to a person that might be toxic and not the right person, because we're actually in love with, like, the patterns of this person, and the entire representate, like what they represent to us, what they remind us of. But it's really happening on a very deep subconscious level. Yes, we can be sensitive also to love bombing. Um, for instance, in neuropsychology, dysregulated dopamine activity has been linked to addiction, depression, or mental health issues, psychopathologies, craving of high dopamine inducing activities, and things like that. So, for instance, when you have a pattern of low dopamine activity, you tend to crave high dopamine inducing activity. And so, for instance, within relationships, someone who love bombs you and gives you a high of dopamine, because obviously love bombing induces dopamine given of affection, when we're in relationships caring for each other, it releases in us human beings dopamine and oxytocin, right? But in the early stages of romantic relationship, it has been studied that a lot of dopamine is oftentimes released, and depending on our own personal dopamine system and activity, we're going to also be influenced in terms of our relationships and partners that we choose and choices that we make, right? So, for instance, if you have certain also psychopathologies, or this mental health disorders, diagnosed ones, uh, simply when we have depression, oftentimes we're going to crave high dopamine activity. We might struggle with addiction. It's very well known that people who struggle with depression, when we struggle with depression, we struggle oftentimes with addiction. We seek that dopamine high to deal, also to regulate pain, to also it, like regulate our low dopamine activity. Okay, so you might be sensitive, for instance, to love bombing and things like that, but what oftentimes leads us to the wrong partners, not necessarily abusive, it can be avoidant partners that are unconsciously avoidant and still manipulate and abuse unconsciously, right? Is gonna be, in my opinion, more of the schema's chemistry. That's what is gonna get us hooked with someone and stuck in a pattern where we're trying to resolve what we lacked in childhood and to kind of repair our parents or caregivers through this person, and trying to change this person unconsciously, or get easily sucked into this dynamic with this person because of this sense of, because of our core beliefs and this recognition of pattern and of this schema chemistry, with this quote unquote chemistry that we feel with this person, which is again the desire from our subconscious mind to repair and heal trauma. But it's not something that we're meant to follow. It's a signal that there's a desire to heal and to repair. There's something that needs to be repaired in our subconscious mind. So the way I like to see schema chemistry is simply a cry for help from our inner child that needs to repair childhood and explore childhood, right? It's simply our reality mirroring to us that there's something that we need to address within us so we can stop being attracted to the same patterns, right? And so that we can remain in control in relationships, because again, it is not normal to be in a relationship where we feel bond and we feel like we cannot leave, or we cannot leave if we want to, and feel like we cannot live without the person, or feel like we're forever connected with this person. That is only schema chemistry that's doing that. That's just not how a healthy relationship is supposed to be, right? Chemistry will exist in a romantic relationship. I'm not saying that a healthy relationship and true unconditional love is boring and it is platonic. Of course not. Like you will experience chemistry in a healthy and happy relationship, but the thing is chemistry is not what starts a deep relationship with someone. It's connection and a sense of connection and connecting with the other, and this feeling of exchange of energy and of emotions, and feeling seen and uplifting each other. So this is why it's so crucial as women that we heal our childhood, that we process trauma from our childhood, that we do the proper inner work of childhood and releasing trauma, actually actually releasing trauma and do the proper trauma healing work so that we don't get stuck in the wrong relationships due to schema chemistry. Because as long as we are drawn to those same type of patterns in people and those types of people, we cannot make space for actual unconditional love in our lives, not just romantically speaking, but in general in all of our relationships with other human beings. If we don't address our childhood traumas and we actually heal and process trauma, very heavy on the processing trauma, not just acknowledging it, processing trauma, we will keep being attracted to the same type of people, and we will be stuck in those kinds of relationship. Will not have room for actual unconditional love and experiencing true deep connection with people in general, romantically and in friendships, everywhere. Schema chemistry happens on such a deep level, such a subconscious level, that you cannot even fight it consciously. You can be as strong as you want, you will fall back into a relationship with this type of patterns and toxic patterns if you don't actually, again, process your trauma and childhood trauma. And I'm saying this because I was stuck for many, many, many years, attracted, attracted and stuck through different relationships with the same patterns. Um, I, although I had such a strong will and conscious about it, about the fact that certain things were toxic, certain traits were toxic, certain things were red flags that I needed to look out for, still, the chemistry I felt with certain people who had certain patterns was out of this world. And it's not until I actually did the proper therapeutic work, trauma oriented therapy work, that I was able to actually make room for true connection in my life, true love in my life in all its form. And I'm not talking just about, because I did have relationships that were healthy, that were like, there was no abuse, like there was no like abuse, what we call abuse. There was no like big red flag, major red flag. Still, I was not really valued. I was not really a priority. Like, it was not the ideal relationship either. It was not, and I didn't, and at the same time, I sometimes I didn't even have feelings enough for the person. Like, it wasn't not the right people as well. So it's not about, you know, just having like being able to stay in a healthy relationship with someone that you don't really have feelings for because it's a good person or whatever. Like, a lot of us do that, because we want to avoid going into toxic relationships, yet we're not with someone that we truly feel connected to and love and have passion for, right? So healing also those traumas, those childhood unmet needs and traumas, and processing all of that, all of your childhood, enables you also to be able to actually experience relationships, and not just romantic ones, where you feel a deep, deep sense of connection with people and you have deep feelings for people if it's romantic and it's actually real connection. And I'd like to not have to say that to end, but trauma can be healed. I know it's something that people tend to not believe in. Unfortunately, in our system, it's a hard concept to grasp. Um, and yes, trauma is not healed overnight, yet it's healable. Like, you don't have to go to an extreme and think, oh well, if it takes too much time, then it's not healable. I just have to manage it, and whatever. Let's just give up. No, you don't have to go to that extreme. Trauma is healable. Yes, it can take some time, But the moment you hop on that train, well, things start to shift in your life. So it's, at least it gets better, and at least you might give yourself a chance to experience true love, connection, romantically and in friendships and in general in your life. What is there really to lose?